Okay, we are live, and hopefully you guys can see me okay and hear me okay. I think everything is going. Yeah, I think we're all connected and we are going. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining me. I'd like to uh, greet Ron here from Linwood, Washington. We have Sanjay from Hyderabad. We've got Gary from Queen Creek, Arizona. Gary is doing an awesome job. You should see these screenshots he's submitting. He's doing my pilot course right now. I have a SwiftUI course in beta, and he's one of my patrons, so he gets to do it for free, and he's giving me a lot of great feedback. And he's doing a great job with his UI too. And then we have Pit Monra from Virginia. I can't. Is it Tim? Pit Monra? I can't remember what it is. We have Luca. Hi, Luca. Okay. So what are we going to learn today? Oh, first of all, I'm Mark Moykins. Welcome to my channel. If this is the first time you've been here, this is part of the SwiftUI Shape series live. And what do we do here? What do we do in the Shape series? Well, we cover a specific shape. We're going, like for today, we're going to do a wave shape, which is basically one side, think of it as a rectangle, and one side has a wave to it. So we're going to create that, and then we're going to see and explore the different ways that we can use this, maybe animate it, and see how it goes. We have John from Sydney. Hello, John. Deepanch. Hello. We also have Kwezi from Ghana. Wow. Welcome. It's first time. All right. So let's see. We also have Juan from Lima. Welcome back, Juan. I remember you were here yesterday. All right. We have Dave from St. Louis. Welcome, Dave. Jacques Van Wyck. All right. Yes, you finally got to join. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to be covering shapes today. And first, let me show you some examples of what I'm talking about. Like, how can we use these shapes? Oh, this is backwards. Let's flip this around. There we go. Okay. So when I talk about a wave shape, I'm talking about like what you see in these pictures here, where it has some kind of curve to it. And you can use it any way you want. You can use it at the bottom of a screen, the top of a screen, in the middle of a screen. It doesn't matter. It's up to you. I'm going to get you started with the basics of how these waves work. And I think it's a lot simpler than you think. And we covered one of our shapes before. We covered a rounded side of a rectangle, right? We made it rounded. And for that, we used a function called quad curve, add quad curve. And you might think, well, we can use two quad curves for this. It's even simpler than that. So keep watching. Now, Ekram from Turkey. Wow, welcome, man. And we also have Anthony from Mexico with your little baby Sophie. Awesome. Hope she gets a lot out of it. We also have, I can't pronounce your name. I can't recognize those letters from Russia, from Ukraine. So yeah, someone from the Ukraine. That's awesome. Okay, now let's talk about our plan here. How are we going to do this? Well, first, let's get started with actually creating the shape. I have a project set up here, and there's nothing in these files. I don't even have a shape ready. So let's add that. Let's add a new file. And I'm going to add a SwiftUI file just so we can use the previewer to check out our shape here. And I'm going to call it wave. Yeah, I'll just call it wave. Okay, now the first thing I do is I change the view to a shape. It's going to be a different type. Shapes have benefits. You can fill them. You can outline them. You can add gradients to them. They resize depending on the device. You know, they're push-out views, right? They just push out and take up all available space. So we're going to get rid of that body in there, that body property. That's for a view. So what do we do with the shape? Xcode will give you a hint. It'll say, hey, do you want to add the protocol stubs for the shape protocol? And you say, yeah, fix it. And there you go. So to get started here, it gives us one function. That's all we need is just this one function called path. And it returns, you see the type that it returns is a path. And a path is basically a representation of a flat 2D object. So and SwiftUI knows how to take that and then render it as a view. So we also get passed in a rectangle, and that is whatever size that we're given to draw this shape within. We don't know what the size is. So we usually draw our shape relative to this rectangle. And I'll show you how we're going to do that. So to get started, first we need to initialize a path object that we can return. So let's do that. Let's create a path, and we'll say it equals a new path here. We're going to initialize it, and then we're going to return it. Now, this path doesn't have anything, doesn't define any 2D object right now, but we're going to do that later. All right, so what's the path? This path object right here has a bunch of drawing functions. You can add lines, you can add curves, you can add circles, rectangles, collections of shapes to put them together. So what are we going to use for this wave object? Well, let's take a look here. We also have Sandeep from India. Welcome. Okay, so when I create a shape, I start with a path plan. I'm very visual. I need to see it. So when I start building it, I know what it's going to look like. So here's our path plan. Now, first of all, the dotted lines that you see here, that rectangle shape, that is our rectangle that's passed into us. So we use this rectangle, and we're going to draw lines and shapes to different points. So the first thing we do, number one here, is move. We move where we want to start from. Now, that starting point can be anywhere, but I usually start in the upper left-hand corner, at the coordinates of 0, 0. And then what I do is I move to the upper right-hand corner with an add line. When you call add line, these are all functions of the path object, by the way. Path.move, path.add line. So the second thing I'm going to do is add a line to the upper right-hand corner. The third thing I'm going to do is add a line to the lower right-hand corner. And then on number 4, this is where we draw our curve. We call path.addCurve. We give it a destination point, just like all the other ones. And the destination will be the lower left-hand corner there. But then we need to supply 2 more points. And these points are for the green handles there, Control 1 and Control 2. So the curve is what's called a Bezier curve. And Pierre Bezier was the guy that popularized this way to draw curves using points, using these control handles, those green little lines there with the handles at the end, the squares at the end. So he found a way where you could just give coordinate to those control handles, and it'll figure out how to draw a curve from one point to another. So that's what we're drawing. We're actually drawing a Bezier curve. So we need a point, which is, when I say point, I mean an XY coordinate. We need an XY coordinate for control 1 and an XY coordinate for control 2. And then last thing we're going to do is call path.closeSubpath. And what that does is that just draws a straight line for us from the last point we're at to the first point we created, which is number 1. It's just going to fill that in for us. Okay. So let's start drawing some of these lines here. First, we're going to do a move. Wow, we have Ultan. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly, from Ireland. Welcome. I don't think I've seen you in here before. And we also have Ivan Pena from McAllen, Texas. Team South Texas. Yeah. I remember you've joined before. I remember you saying that. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is do a move, right? So we're going to say path.move. And where are we moving to? There's a couple of things that you can use. If you want to start from 0, 0, there's a kind of like a shortcut that we can use, just called 0 right here. So it's cgpoint.0. And you can see here from the description, its location is 0, 0. X and Y, 0, 0. So it starts us off in the upper left-hand corner. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to add a line to the upper right-hand corner. So let's see. We'll do path.addLine. There's 2 of them here. There's add lines, where you pass a collection of points or an array of points. We don't want that one. We just want the singular one. And then the point, well, we're going to define an XY coordinate, but is there an easy way to do this? I don't know what the width of my shape is. So I want to say, like, just, make the X, which is the horizontal line, make it go all the way to the end. So how can I do that? Well, luckily, the rectangle gives us these preset points for us. And where we're going to the upper right-hand corner, for the X coordinate, we want to say max X. So your rectangle that's passed in could be 100 wide, 200 wide, 1,000 wide. We don't know. But we can just say max X, and it will go all the way to the end. So that is something that we can use there. And for the Y coordinate, we could say 0, because it's not going down or up. It's just staying right at 0. So we can use 0, or we can use min Y. If you look over to the left there, you see min Y. And as you go down, there's a mid Y, which is 50% down into, the height of your shape, and then max Y, which is the height of your shape. So between the min, mid, and max values for X and Y coordinates, we can pretty much tell our points where to go without having to specify any hard-coded values. So that is a great help for us right there. Hello, Akshay. Welcome. Yamayugi. That's okay. All right, so let's see. For the X coordinate, we want to access our rectangle that's being passed in, and we're going to say max X. And for Y, we can say 0. That's totally fine. Or you can also say rect dot min Y. That's also 0. Let's give ourselves some room here. Oh, first of all, let me get some feedback from you guys. Is this font size okay? I can increase it if it's too small. So let me know in the comments, okay? All right. Now, looking at our path plan here, the next thing we want to do is we want to draw, we have our first line drawn, and then we want to draw a line going down to the lower right-hand corner. So let's do that. So say add line to the CG point, and for the X, that's max X again. Max X. And for the Y, that's going to be different this time. This is going to be the max Y, which is the height. There you go, max Y. That is the height of your shape. Now notice I have this preview down here, and I have wave in here, which is my shape. So at this point, I think I can resume and see part of my shape as it's being drawn. So let's take a look here. A little bit bigger, watching from an iPhone. Okay. You gotta watch it from your computer so you can see the whole thing. All right, I'll tell you what. I'll make it a little bit bigger here. There. All right. Now, you notice on our phone here, it's huge. It's taking up the whole screen, right? And that's because shapes are push-out views. They're going to take up as much space as you give them. So I'm going to add a height to this. And we're going to say frame, height, and we'll just say 200. There we go. So there's the beginning of our shape. We have a line going across, and we have a line going down. And then it looks like there's a line going from the lower right-hand corner back to the beginning. It's not a line. It's just the fill. So, for example, if I actually add a line to this, let's add a stroke. And right here. So we'll say color red. This will be the stroke of our line, and we'll make it 5. So you notice there's only 2 lines, right? Actually, let me do this. Let me add padding around this so you can see the sides better. There we go. So we really only have 2 lines. Now we need to add our curve. So let's do that. I add a comment here. Curve at the bottom. Okay. So there is a function here for add curve. Right here. So again, it's like I told you before, there's 3 parameters. There's your destination, where you're going to. Then you need to define a XY coordinate for control 1 and XY coordinate for control 2. So for our first point, what we're going to do here is we're going to say, for the X coordinate, that is min X because it's 0. So we can use 0 or min X. I'll just use 0. No, I'm going to keep it consistent here. We'll say min X. And for Y, that is the height of our rectangle. So we want to say max Y. Okay. Now let's see. We have control 1 and control 2. I'm going to put these on separate lines just so it's a little bit more clear. Now let's take a look at this here. We kind of have to guess where we want these points. And I'm going to kind of like estimate here. Now, when you look at control 1, we're starting with control 1 first. And it's about 75% of the max X. So you're looking at the width, and it's about 75%, going across. And it's about 50% going down. Actually, if you look at this picture, that's exactly what it is. It's 75% over and 25% down. So we're going to start with that. We will make this customizable so we can change those. But let's start with 75% over and 50% down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a rectangle. I'm going to go with the max X and then multiply that by 0.75. That'll give me 75% of the width. And then for y, I'm going to do something similar. I'll start with the max y, the height. And I'm going to multiply that by 0.5, 50% down. Okay, now let's talk about our second control point here. Mid. Oh, yeah. Yeah, good point. So, we don't even have to multiply this by 0.5. Kuzia, he said we could just use the mid y, which is perfect, man. Mid y. There we go. All right. And for x, let's see. Let's take a look at our path plan again. That is about 25% over, x, 25% over. And then going down, well, we kind of want it to be the same amount that control 1 goes down, just to keep that a nice even wave there, right? So instead of multiplying it by 0.5, I'm going to multiply it by 1.5. And that should give us, equal distance that we have for control 1. You know what I mean? As much as control 1 goes up, we want control 2 to go down. So for x, we're just going to do something like this. Let me copy that. This time it's just going to be 2.5. And for the y coordinate, we want to take the max y and multiply it by 1.25. Okay, so take a look at our preview. You can see the shape coming in there nicely. And we're still missing one last line, the line that goes up. So what am I going to do here? I don't have to draw a line. I can just have it close the subpath for me, and it will draw that last line for us. So there you go. There's our wave shape right here. And, it's obvious that you can stroke it because it's a path, or it's a shape object, right? So you can add strokes to shapes. If this was a view, we wouldn't be able to add a stroke to it like this. So that's why I like to make these shape objects. Gives them a little bit more functionality. Now, let's try using this here. Let's see what it looks like maybe in a UI. So we need to test this. So we're going to go to our wave field here. And how might you use this object here? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a VStack. And I'll just leave text in here. I'll just say this is a filled wave. And we're going to add a wave to the top here, like that. Of course, it's a push-out view. It's going to fill up the whole thing, right? So what I want to do is I want to give it a frame, and I'm going to give it a height here, and we'll say it's 150 this time. There we go. So we have our wave, and it's like a header at the top, and then we're going to push it to the top using a spacer. It's going to push it right up to the top. But you notice it doesn't go into the safe area. We kind of want it to go into the safe area, right? So on my VStack, I'm going to ignore that top edge for the safe area. So it just goes right up in there. All right, good. Now let's see. We can give it a color. And what I have here, let me just show you guys something. I actually have a color scheme. And this is kind of like the color scheme I've been using for my other shape projects. If you have accessed my other shape projects, you notice that they all use these same colors. And I think it's a good color scheme, so I just kind of stuck with it. And if you download the projects, by the way, if you, let's see. Oh, yeah, Watchmen. Yeah, you're right. It is supposed to be 1.5. Okay. So this is what's great. I love working with you guys. Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. It should be 1.5. So he's saying it should be 1.5 down. Like if we look at our path project here, our path plan. So for control 1, we're going 50% down, right? So control 2 should be 1.5. We should be adding that 50% to the height. So yeah, you're absolutely right. I was wondering, when I was looking at it, I'm like, that second curve looks a little thin. It looks a little too narrow. All right, yeah, that looks a lot better. Okay, good. All right, so let's go back to our wave. Yeah, it looks more even, right? All right, good. Thanks for the suggestion there. Okay, now let's give it a fill using one of our theme colors. Oh, let me show you something else. So I had those named colors, but then I also have a color extension. So I can just type in color.theme, and I can access one of my 5 colors here. that I have in my theme. Okay, so we're going to say fill. Then I'm going to say color dot, and we can, here are my named colors right here. So we can try like a secondary color. See what that looks like. Yeah, there you go. And we can also give this a background, see how it looks against the background. What I'm going to do is just embed this in a Z stack. I embedded it in a H stack first because there's no embed in Z stack or Z stack. So I just changed the H stack to a Z stack. Okay, and for the background color, I'm just going to say color dot theme, and I have my background color right here. And I also want that to go into all the safe areas. Say dot all. Okay, good. So you can see it a little bit here. We can also try the tertiary color. There, that's that green color. Now, if you want, you could also give shadows to shapes. So we can do that. Give it a shadow. And we can say, let's try 4. There, gives it a little bit of depth there, right? All right, so that's one way to do it. And now we can also give this an overlay. Like maybe we want this to be the header of our view, right? So let's overlay some text on there. Say filled wave. We can make that a little bit more bold. So maybe give it a large title, and we'll make it bold here, like that. And then we also have a foreground color for our theme, so we can use that. Foreground color. And we want theme, foreground. Foreground is mostly like the text color. You notice it more, like if I go to dark mode, let's see here, preferred color scheme, and we look at dark, you notice it switches there. All right, good. So we can also create this really cool effect with overlapping these shapes. And I do this a lot. When I create a custom shape, I like to experiment with it. So let's check this out. What I'm going to do, actually, I'm going to start with this. Let's copy the whole body there. Do that. Okay, so we're starting with the same, and I'll change this with overlapping. And then what I'm going to do for this wave, I'm actually going to embed that in another Z stack so I can overlap these guys, right? So I'll just embed it in a H stack, go to Z stack. Yeah, thank you, Jacques. If you guys want to give this a thumbs up, that'll help other people find it. Okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this, but I'm not going to copy the shadow. I'm just going to copy the wave and the color. Okay, now this wave is on top. So, yeah, actually what I'm going to do, let me switch this around. I'm going to put this one in the back. The one with the text we want on the top. And now what I can do, I can give this a little bit more height. So let's see, let's try 170. And now when you look at it, you notice there's, oh, you know what? Okay. For this Z stack, I want to make this Z stack, I want all the shapes that I give it to go up to the top. You notice here, let me go to an extreme here. Change this to 100. You notice the, let's resume it. When I select this shape, it's actually in the back, but it's in the middle of the Z stack, right? Let me give this some more room here. Go the other way. There you go. So you notice the shape on top is right in the middle. We want to push all the shapes to the top. You can do that with the Z stack. Z stack has an alignment. So let's change that. And we'll make it top. There. Now all of our shapes are at the top. So this is something that I do. I like to overlap them to kind of create and show like different waves. So let's do this. Let's we'll give this one a shadow as well. The one in the back. There. And then you can just play with that. Just add more layers. But there might be something else that you want to do too. What if you want to overlap these, but you want the waves to go the other direction? What's something that you could do here? Well, you want to be able to customize those waves a little bit, right? You could play with the frame. You could leave your object just like this, keep it simple, and then play with the frame a little bit. And like we did, we made our frame bigger. We can make it smaller to create the overlapping. If you want to stretch it out, one thing that I do is you can use a negative value for your padding, your horizontal padding. So we can change this to horizontal. And then for the length, we say negative 40. And you notice that shape on top is now kind of like stretched out more, right? So that's another way. But what if you want the waves to go the other direction? You could do a scale effect on the x coordinate and give it a -1, and that'll flip it around. But without doing that, let's talk about customizing our wave a little bit. Let's give ourselves the ability to change the waves. Not only change the waves, but also change the curve. You know, how much of a curve we have. We can make the curve bigger, make it smaller. So let's talk about that. What we'll need, let me show you a plan that I drew out here. My offset plan. So right now, the x coordinates are fine. We're going to leave the x coordinates alone. We're going to leave, the control point. It's going to be still at 75%, and control point 2 will still be 25% over. What we're going to offset is just the y coordinate. We're going to move control point 1, give ourselves the ability to move it up or down, and same with control point 2, using just the y coordinate. Now, this is what we have right now. We go 50% down, and from the bottom line, we also go 50% down. What if we wanted to go the inverse? What if we wanted to go on control 1, 25% down, but on control 2, you don't want to go 25% down, you want to go 75% down. Remember, as control 1 goes up, you want control 2 to go down. Now, again, these are just my rules, right? For the shape that I'm creating, this is what I want, so I can control the waves. You guys can do whatever you want. You can program this shape any way you want, and I'm sure it'll come out looking great. Well, the way we have it set up right now, we can't do that. So we need a different plan for this. And this is the plan that I came up with. What I'm going to do is start from the purple line. That's max Y right there. I'm going to start from max Y. And if I say pass in like 75%, then what that means is I want control 1 to go up 75%, and I want control 2 to go down 75%. That way I can just pass in one number and it will do the inverse for the controls. I can pass in 25% and control 1 will go 25% up, starting from the purple line there. It'll go up 25%, and control 2 will just go down 25%. If I pass in 0, it's going to be a straight line. So that's my plan. That's what I want to do for my offset. So first thing we're going to need is a variable here. Back is 1:30 a.m. Well, thanks for staying up. What about animating the points? We're going to get to that after. But first, let's talk about customizing our shape here. I got a real treat for you guys for animation here. Okay, so let's create a variable, and I'm going to call it y offset. It's going to be a CG point, or a CG float, rather. And by default, we're going to keep it at 50%. That's kind of like where we're at right now. We're at 50% up, 50% down. So, and remember, when I say 50%, I'm talking about 50% from max Y, right? 50% up from max Y. We're no longer coming down. So we're going to have to change our calculations here a little bit for the Y axis. So let's see, control 1, we're going to start from max Y. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply that by our offset. So Y offset, like that. Let's resume that, just to make sure we're still on the right path here. Path. Okay, nothing really changed, so we know it still works the same. Now for the Y coordinate on control 2, that one's going to be a little bit different. So we're going to start with, wait, hold on, let me see something here. No, this isn't going to work. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. We do want to multiply it, but because it's 50%, we don't really notice the difference here. So if it's 75%, you'll notice it goes in the wrong direction. Yeah, 75% should make the curve bigger, not smaller. So let me fix this here. What we want to do is we want to start with max Y, And we're going to subtract the result like that. So you notice the wave gets bigger. And looking at order of operations here, let's just give ourselves a little refresher. When it comes to mathematical operators like multiplication, division, multiplication will happen first. This is going to happen first. We'll get that result first, and then that result will be subtracted from max y. So if you wanted to make it a little bit clearer, we could just wrap this in some parentheses, indicating that this will happen first, and then it will be subtracted. I could switch them around. That's another option that you guys have. Okay, so we're going to be doing something similar, just like this. So let me copy this. Except we want it to go the other direction, right? We want to add it, not multiply it. We want to add it to the max y, so it goes down. So now you can see with one number, we can adjust this curvature here. Now, if I go down to my previews here, I can test this. If I hit Control Space, there's a new parameter here in my initializer called y offset. So let's change it to 0.1. We should get a really small curve there, very small. Again, if it's 0, it's going to be a straight line. If we go to 0.9, go extreme, we get a much bigger curve. Now, you can also go, much higher numbers, whole numbers, right? So we can go 4, and then we get a huge wave going. So we probably don't want to do that. Let's stick with 0.7. Yeah. So that is how we can customize it. So let's go back to our testing page here, the overlapping. Oh, you know what? So the waves changed because I changed the default. Let me change this back to 0.5, our default y offset there. And let's go back. Let's resume that. Okay, there we go. Let me build it here. I don't think it took place. There we go. All right, now it took place. Now what we can do, as we overlap these, we can actually change the waves. So here's another thing I like to do. What I want to do is I want to give these waves some opacity. Not opacity. I want to lower the opacity. When you say something has opacity or is opaque, that means it's solid. Light can't go through. We want to make it more transparent, so we're going to lower the solidity of it, or the opacity. So let's go to opacity here. I'm doing this on the Z-stack. I'm thinking, no, I'm not going to add it to the Z-stack to apply it to everything, because I have text there, and it's going to make the text less opaque. It's going to make the text see-through. So we'll just add it here. This is our one in the back. We'll add some opacity there. If I can spell opacity. Now, let's say 0.5. There we go. So it's a little bit lighter now. And then the one on top, we're going to give that some opacity. I'm going to delete the padding here, the one thing that was stretching it out, because now what we can do, there, add some opacity. Now what we can do is we can actually adjust the wave to change it. So I'm going to hit Control Space. I'm going to use our new initializer here for our y offset. By default, it's 0.5. So let's go to 0.25, and we'll make it a little bit less. And then let's add another layer here. So I'm going to add an even bigger layer in the back, like that. And let's change this one to, see, we have 150. Let's increment it by 20. There. Now we have 3 layers. And for this one, I'm going to reverse the wave. So how do we reverse the wave? Well, we just apply a negative amount. So instead of like 0.75, I could say negative. We'll just do 0.6 and see how that looks. Now we have a wave going the other direction here. So that looks kind of cool. Now, another thing if you want to do, is we can remove the opacity from all of them. I'm just going to comment them out. And now you can see it has a really cool effect with just the shadows, right? We can even increase the shadows to really bring that out. So let's see. Let's increase these shadows to 8 here. And now you can really see a really cool effect. I really like this look. For that first wave, I'm going to decrease that a little bit to like 130. Then you can really see the difference here. So now, let's see here. Watchmen, he's got another suggestion. I love your suggestions, man. They're really great. You can shorten the expression to rectangle dot max y times 1 plus negative y offset. Oh, instead of subtracting it, which one are you talking about? Control 1 or Control 2? Or both? There's a 30-second delay here, so when I ask something, you guys aren't going to hear it. Well, anyway, while he's responding, let's talk about our next subject about animating. How can we animate this? Because wouldn't it be cool if we could see the wave kind of like go up and down? That'd be super cool. So how do we do this? Well, I refer back to this guy named Javier who wrote the blog SwiftUI Labs, and he did some research into this on how to animate shapes. And he just said there's one property that you have to supply, and it's animatable data. So let's do that. Let's say var animatable data, and you'll see it right here. It's cool. It has autocomplete right there. The data to be animated. So we'll just hit enter right there. And there can only be one animatable data, but you can use tuples to control many variables that you want to animate. We're only going to control one. We're going to animate the y offset here. So we have to say the type. What type is it? Now, you can't animate just any type of data or any type in SwiftUI, okay? It usually has to do, the things that you can animate are usually types of numbers. And we're animating a CG float here. That y offset is a CG float. And then we're going to give it a getter and a setter. So when SwiftUI calls this property, it knows which, it's saying, give me a property that I'm going to animate. So we'll say get, and we're going to return our y offset. And we're going to, and we need a setter, because when you animate something, like if you're animating something from 1 to 4, then SwiftUI is going to use this property and say, okay, my starting point is 1, and I want to go to 4. And so it's going to get the offset, the y offset, and it's going to do what's called interpolation. So it knows it needs to get to 4, so then it's going to change it to 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, then it's going to get to 2, then it's going to get to 3, until it finally gets to 4. And as it makes those changes to our animatable data here, it incrementally makes these changes so it creates the illusion of an animation. Okay, so setting it, we want to set y offset here equal to new value. New value is a keyword. It basically just says this is the new value that is being set. All right, that should be all we need. So let's see here. Let's resume this, make sure everything still looks okay. And yeah, you ever have to hit the resume twice? I don't know why it does that. Okay. So we're going to go into this new file here, wave animated. And again, I'm going to start with copying this here. And wait, did that include the body? Yeah, I did. All right, so let's replace the body here. Okay, and this time it'll be animated wave. All right, now let's see here. We want to animate this, so we're going to need some way to trigger this animation. I'm just going to create a button. So let's create a button down here. And it'll just be a super simple button. Actually, let me see something here. Yeah, I have this snippet here that creates it for me. And I also need a state variable. So we need a state. My fingers are too big. Make it a private var. And then this will be called change, and it's going to be a Boolean. So by default, we'll set it to false. Be no change. All right, great. So we have that. Let's make sure that still works. Okay, good. Yeah, the button's down here. The button, it's not our normal color because we're setting the foreground color to our, we're setting the foreground color to it. So let's see here. Let me just change the foreground color here so it stands out a little bit more. I'll make it a little bit bigger too. So say font, or say foreground color, theme, accent. And then let's change the font. And just so you guys can really see it, we'll make it large title. There we go. Then let's add another spacer here so it just puts it closer in the middle. There, so there's our button. So when I click this, I want this wave to animate, but there's no change, right? There's nothing, our wave isn't responding to anything. What we want to do is we want to use our parameter, our Y offset here, and we want to look at that change variable there. We say if change is true, then let's see, we're starting at, by default, it's 0.5, right? So let's do this. When it changes, let's change it to the inverse, negative 0.5. And when it's not being changed, it just goes to 0.5. Okay, so let's run this and let's just see what it looks like. There's no animation right now. We just want to make sure that a change is happening. Is that done? Okay, it's still running. There we go, now it's done. So if I click this, okay, that's fine, right? You notice it switches around. Now let's animate this. What I'm going to do, I'm going to create an implicit, what's called an implicit animation. I'm going to just add the animation just to this wave. There's a reason why I'm doing this. You guys will see later. Okay, and I'm going to use animation, ease in, out, and I'm going to give this a duration of maybe, let's try 1 second at first. All right, now let's test it. There we go. So now we have a nice animation there going up and down. Now, if you want to get extra fancy, we can actually have this continue. We can have the wave continue, okay? So we can say auto reverse. Right here, repeat forever, auto reverse is true. So now when I click change, notice the wave goes up and down. It's kind of fast. Maybe we want to slow it down a little bit. Say 2. There we go. We got a nice flowing wave there. But wouldn't it look cool if there was another wave on top of it and you saw them go in the opposite directions? Okay, so let's try that. Let's do that. So what we're going to do is same as the other one, right? Let me just stop that real quick. We're going to take this wave and we're going to put it in a Z stack, a Z stack. And let's change that H stack to a Z stack. We know we're going to need alignment to push them up to the top, right? So let's add that alignment. And let's say dot top. Now there's only one thing in here. So let's add 2 things, 2 waves. And we'll add one in the back. This one will be a little bit bigger. So let's make this one a little bit smaller. Let's say 130. There you go. Now you can see both. We don't need the text overlay. And let's make the wave a little bit see-through. Let's add some transparency to the top wave. So, you know, when they're going up and down, you can still see the wave in back. So let's do that. Let's, after fill, let's add an opacity. Oh, no, that's my back wave. We want to add it to the front wave, which is down here. Lots of opacity there. And we'll say 0. Let's try 8. And I'm going to, the wave in the back, I'm going to reverse. So it'll start off as negative 0.5. It's the opposite direction now. And then as it animates, you'll see them cross over. And I'm also going to change the animation a little bit too. So 1 is actually animating at a different rate. Let's change this to 1.5. And let's see what that looks like. So say change. And there you go. You got some, the waves are moving at different rates, right? And they're just repeating, going back and forth. You guys, you can even change how much the wave, how big the wave is for these. Right now we're using 0.5 for both. But say like on the bottom one, we can have it go even further, like 0.7. So let's try that. Oh, there we go. So there, the one in the back is going up and down further, while the one on top isn't going up and down as much. Okay. I'm reading Watchman's comment here. So he says, I meant that rec dot max y minus rec dot max y times y offset equals. There's a lot going on there. Oh, let's see. Watchman, I'm going to have to review this later because I can't calculate and do this in my head and apply it to the code that I already have. So if it's okay, I'm going to leave it alone for now. And then if you want to play with it later, I'll be uploading this project probably tomorrow. So you guys can download it and let's see, then you can get back to me and let me know how it works out. Let's see. Are there any other questions? I think we have enough here. Kuzia, you're saying something about same height. I'm not quite sure what that means. We're using. Oh, you want to see what it looks like with if they're both the same height, maybe? Like if they're both 150? Let's try that. Yeah, that looks pretty cool too, right? And remember, we're just using two shapes that are overlapping. You can use 3, 5, however many you want. And I think it'll create this really cool effect. Now, if you want to try something different, we're using kind of like equilateral waves, right? Where there's a midpoint. You notice like when you look at this right here, when they're the same height, there's a midpoint where the waves cross. You can customize this shape further so you can move those control handles, and you can maybe add an X offset as another property. So it moves both the waves over to the right or to the left. I played with that a little bit too, but it starts getting more complicated, and I like to keep them simple. So I think we have something really cool here that you guys could use and implement in your own projects. If you do need to adjust inside the frame. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about, Gary. I'm not quite sure what that's in reference to. There is a delay, so I know what I'm talking about. You guys respond to 30 seconds later, so I have to remember what I said 30 seconds ago for your responses. Okay, well, I think, let's see. It's been 47 minutes. I think we made some great progress on this shape. I think you guys have something that you can use and play with. If you want, when the project is available, or maybe you don't need the project, you can just watch this video and implement it. Create your own wave shape, apply it to your UI, and definitely show me what it looks like. If you add some animation there, you do something cool with it, show me what that looks like too. You can follow me on Twitter. It's at Big Mountain Studio. It's at, yeah, I'll just type it in here. Twitter at Big MTN Studio. So you can use that to tag me in whatever it is you create. I'd love to see it. I think it'd be super awesome. Patreon. Yeah, if you guys want to support me on Patreon, it is patreon.com Big Mountain Studio. Like that. I'll update the description for this video. I'll update that with that information. I think I only have like a few links in there right now to my website and where you can get the code for this project. So Juan, he's asking, how can I add more control points? What you can do, you can't add, it's not like you add a Bezier curve in your vector drawing program, and you can add more points and more curves. What you have to do is you have to draw multiple waves, multiple curves. So, you know, when you look at our wave that we have here, our shape, we're adding one curve here. What you would have to do is you'd have to add curve multiple times. And if you want it along the same line, your destination here, you might only go, instead of to min X, you might go to the middle X first. And that might be one line. And then you can draw another line from mid X to min X, go to the beginning. And then you can add more waves and have them do more things. So you'll just have to connect curves, basically. All right, I think we're all set. I'm going to log off here and say goodbye and thank everyone for joining me for this session. I had a lot of fun. Waves, and this creates a super cool effect, and it can really differentiate your app from all the other apps out there with just this one simple shape. All right, thanks guys. Appreciate you for joining me, and goodbye.